that's all the luggage I took. So yeah, so the way this came about, so I'm a musician and I run a failing book enterprise called Astral Horizon Press. And I'm a recreational pilot. I was doing about 30 hours a year. During COVID I got my instructor's rating, and with a little bit of instructing it got me up to about 500 hours at the end of 2022. And I went to pick up a plane in Biggin Hill, which is a general aviation and corporate traffic airfield in London, to pick up a plane, move it after maintenance, and I bumped into a pal of mine who's incredibly experienced, one of Britain's most experienced general aviation pilots. He has over 10,000 hours in airplanes that don't even have autopilots. And I asked him what he was up to when I bumped into him at Biggin, and he said, oh, next week I'm flying a Cessna to a new owner in Sudan. And I was like, oh my God, this is just what I've been waiting for, because because at Christmas 2017, with a few pals, I did a 10-day drive across Iraq from Baghdad to Basra. And it was such a fantastic trip. I was very scared beforehand. I loved every second of it when we were there. And so now it's 5 years later, it's the same time of year, and I'm just thinking, I'd love to do something hot, Islamic, exotic, difficult. And also I wanted to stretch my legs in an airplane. So when I bumped into Timothy, who said he was going to fly a Cessna to Sudan, I was like, this is literally what I was consciously praying for. And I couldn't believe my good fortune. But he explained that a lot of places don't have avgas, which is the fuel that piston engines run. And it's more like gasoline, whereas jet fuel is more like diesel. A lot of places don't have avgas, so there was going to be 5 jerry cans on the back seat full of avgas, not plugged into the aircraft fuel system, but to refuel on the ground, especially in case of a diversion. And that weight would put the airplane within 30 kilos of max takeoff weight with one pilot. So I wished him the best of luck, and and the next morning he texted me, I'm in hospital, can you do it on your own? I was like, please don't ask me that. Please don't ask me that, because I just thought if I say yes, it'll be the most difficult and scary thing I've ever done. And if I say no, my brain, which is not always my best friend, will construct the narrative of the perfect trip that I said no to, and I'll have to live with that forever. And I thought about it for about 2 hours, but in the end I just thought, I don't have a choice. I have to say yes. I'm just going to give it my best shot and get as far as I can. That's the airplane. I don't have a picture of it in Biggin actually, but that's the airplane en route, and my luggage. So anyway, I'm going to crack on. First, so I left on the 6th of January 2023. I only had a week of preparation to buy. Leaving the UK on the 6th of January, look at that beautiful day. I can't believe it. I must be a genius. This is going to be great. Actually, it's not quite sure. I was really scared, but it was a really good start. But only a few minutes later, on the other side of the English Channel, one am I pointing at the screen, France was actually completely covered in low cloud. So I could only get, well, barely 100 miles done out of nearly 4,000 miles. So day one, about 100 miles. And in hindsight, it might have been quite good luck that it worked out that way, because it meant I could just cross the channel, enter the European Union, refuel, kind of like taking a spaceship into Earth orbit and then back down again, making sure that the life support systems work before we go to the rings of Saturn. So I spent the rest of the day in this is Le Touquet, if I didn't mention. Le Touquet is a sort of a French resort town on the English Channel. Still pointing at the picture for some reason. So there we go. My first time refueling. Right. So okay. First night was in Le Touquet. Day 2 was a 5-hour leg across France down to Valence in the south of France, which was a really tough leg. 20-knot headwind on the nose. My ground speed never got above 75 knots. 4 hours and 55 minutes, and to Valence. Where I arrived, and I arrived on a Saturday night, and so on the Sunday the airfield was completely closed. I had a special PIN number from the handling agent to get airside, and I refueled for the first time. And I was really happy to do it at an airfield that was empty, because I thought, if I'm going to pour avgas all over myself in some kind of disastrous mistake that there's no one's going to be there to watch. But yeah, it's really tough. I mean, those things, they weigh about 25 kilos, 60 pounds each. So you're kind of in a stress position trying to, you know, fill it up, but it all worked out. Day 3 was the scariest thing I think that's ever happened to me. Valence to Albenga in Italy. So from Valence due south to the Mediterranean and just reaching the Med just west of Nice, and then along the Riviera and then into Italy. The forecast was 2,000 foot scattered, maybe a chance of rain after dinner. It looked flyable, so off I went. But once I got to the Mediterranean, the cloud base dropped to 500 feet, and with crazy rain, crazy turbulence, and Nice. So this is Nice Airport, and this is me at 500 feet, which was as far as I could go. Nice offered me to land, but I just thought this is crazy because I thought, well, they won't. I'd already put the avgas in my jerry cans into the plane, so the jerry cans were empty. I knew that Nice wouldn't have avgas. And so they said, would you like to land? And I said no. And it was exactly the wrong answer. Of course I should have landed, but I just thought, you know, it would cost 10,000 euros to get a Bowser of avgas airside. It'll take months. And so I pressed on. You know, I mean, air traffic control really helpful, like I said, but it was just such a frightening ride. Really just such a rough ride, crazy rain. But the trouble with flying is there's no pause button, and I just had to make it work. There was one jolt, actually, that was so violent that the empty jerry cans and the 12-pound cardboard box in the seat next to me leapt into the air, smashed into the ceiling, and back down again. I was a gibbering wreck, I don't mind telling you. Again, so yeah, so Nice, they let me squeeze past on the north side of their runways. I could probably go back to it. The runways go east-west, and I'm going east on the north side of the runways. This is landing in Albenga. You can probably, can you see the, oh, this has a pointer, I think. There's the runway. Those are mountains. Yeah, gibbering wreck I was with fear. Nice landing. Of course, the next day the weather's perfect. Well, it started out perfect. This is going across Italy. My intention was to go all the way across Italy, cross the top of the Adriatic, and then land in a place called Portoros in Slovenia. And it started out really nice. This is quite interesting because I'm actually at 6,000 feet, but the terrain is really, really high because you can see like individual houses and stuff. So it's really odd to look down and see roads and cars and stuff, but the altimeter shows 6,000 feet. Anyway, beautiful countryside, still heading east in nice weather. But as I kept going, as I kept going, it started to get cloudy, and I couldn't even go underneath it. Well, I did go under, of course. I descended out of the cloud, and the Italian air traffic control was fantastic, and they recommended that I go to Verona. And that worked out great. Verona gave me the narrow body rate, which is 192 euros. That was my first ever weather diversion. This thing, every single day I was doing something. So I only had 500 hours. Every single day I was doing something I'd never done before. This is my first ever weather diversion anyway. Verona was great. Something about the Romeo and Juliet balcony. I'm not a very cultured person. This is crossing the Adriatic. This is Venice, actually. So this thing, I mean, in between, you know, hours of sheer terror, you know, it's amazing to fly a little airplane from England and go past Verona, Venice. Did I say I said Verona twice today? It's Venice. It's obviously Venice. I landed in Portoros a day late, refueled, and then headed down the Adriatic to Brindisi, which is on the heel of the boot of Italy. I didn't really want to go. I was feeling already very worn out by it, and but there was a really, really rollicking tailwind, at least 20 knots, and I thought I really need to take advantage of this, so off I went. Another ridiculous mistake, and this is a recurring theme, I think, is that I was like, you know, I've got a Mediterranean crossing to do, so, you know, now is not the time to be nervous about being over water. So I thought, if I'm going to do the second leg today, all the way down to Brindisi, I'm going direct. And even though that means almost the whole leg, 3 hours out of range of land, out of gliding range of land. Which is ridiculous, because I realized later that by adding about 10 or 15 minutes to the route, I could have done almost the whole thing within gliding range of land. So it was kind of ridiculous. But as an aside, there is nothing the iPhone camera can't do. You just point it at the sun and it's like, no problem at all. So that's the Adriatic heading southeast towards Brindisi. Yeah, again, I just love the iPhone camera, 4,800 feet, and a rollicking tailwind. So I did from basically Venice to Brindisi was 3 hours and 20 minutes, which is really fast. For a Cessna 172, it's unbelievable. Again, with the iPhone camera being miraculous, it's downwind to land in Brindisi. Big crosswind on landing, but it worked out. It was funny, with the landings, I think that like every landing except for one was a real greaser, and I think it's because I was doing so much scary and new stuff every day that I really didn't know what I was doing. And then when it came to landing, I think part of my brain's like, okay, finally something we've done before. This we can do, and so all the landings worked out really nice, which is nice to know. So I had a day off in Brindisi because of weather, and then the next day I was going to go from Brindisi to Ioannina in Greece. I found the Greeks to be, at the institutional level, the hardest to deal with, because they really are on a war footing with Turkey, even though they're both in NATO. And almost all airfields in Greece, you need written permission from the military to land at. And a lot of them don't have avgas, so it was really a struggle to make it work. We were going to go to Corfu. Corfu had everything, except it closed for a month with about 3 days' notice, so cheers. So the plan was to go from Brindisi to Ioannina in Greece, halfway across the Adriatic. Corfu radar said that the visibility in Ioannina is 100 meters. So I don't even think jets can land in that. I don't know, it sounds like a crazy thing to say, because I spent almost my entire time looking at weather apps, but I wondered, did I miss something when I was planning that leg? Because I can't believe that 100 meters visibility just comes out of nowhere. Anyway, let's assume that I checked the weather and it came out of nowhere. But I couldn't land. I had filed a diversion airport, but it turned out to be half military, and the air traffic controller said I probably couldn't land even if I declared an emergency. But they recommended Kefalonia, which is an island down the coast, and so that's where I went. And you can see actually the weather's quite benign. So my second weather diversion in almost as many days. It was a lovely welcome. We've got this guy was, I think, policeman and 3 ground handling agents. Alexa loves weight and balance. I said, do you enjoy what she said? I just love doing weight and balance. That was super helpful. Let's see. Okay, I'm just going to skip back. So I just want to tell you a funny story without giving away the punchline. So now I'm in Kefalonia, and now I think, well, I don't know where I'm going to go next. But there's a really big general aviation airfield in Athens called Megara. And I thought, well, I'll go to Megara and refuel. And I knew that I couldn't night stop without permission from the military. So I phoned them. I said, I know I can't night stop, but I need fuel. So can I just land, fill up, and can you tell me any farm strip, anywhere, I don't care, that I can go and stop for night? And she said, I'm on my own here. She was very nice, by the way. She said, I'm on my own, don't really want you to come. Why don't you just go to Athens International Airport? Can I do that? And she said, I think so. Anyway, so I found a handling agent on the field at Athens, and they said, yeah, email us your reg and your max takeoff weight for the invoice, and we'll see you at the parking spot. Find a flight plan, obviously, and off I went. So, so I'm flying. So I went back to Alexa and said, Alexa, I'm flying to Athens International Airport. So this is coming into Athens. This is just for the aviation enthusiasts in the group here. That's the old Hellenikon airport, as it is today. And I remember taking off. My first trip without parents was in the early 90s. I flew Olympic Airways to Sydney from there in a big old jumbo, ex-Singapore Airlines it was. They're not big on the glide clear rule. In the UK, you have to be able to glide clear in a single engine airplane. But they just brought me in over Athens. The Parthenon is there. So I'm going due north. So I flew due north. There's a gap in the mountains there, which I went through to the right, and then that's where the new airport is. It's got 2 runways. There's that's the left, and there's a right one over there somewhere. And I thought, how are they going to get a Cessna in? It's a really busy airport, one of the busiest in Europe. And I thought, how are they going to get a Cessna in that does 50 knots on ground speed on final, when everything else is doing 150? Well, they brought me in on the takeoff runway, so you can see there's someone waiting there. So they're just firing off departures. And then when I'm really close, they stop the departures, I land and get off, and then that aircraft, as soon as I was cleared, this guy took off behind me. So I was really impressed, and then I taxied all the way up to the general aviation as well. Proper fueling at last, although because nothing is easy, I stood too close to this truck and got a face full of fumes that had me fluey for days and coughing for weeks. But there you go. And that was nice. That was really, I mean, the Athens experience was really fantastic. A night at the Athens Airport Sofitel. I was trying to keep the budget down, but you know, again, I was so tired. And the handling agent said, you know, we can organise your hotel for you. And I said, oh, look, where is it? He goes, it's there. I said, book it. So the next day was down to Crete, and maybe I'm not much of a geography expert. I didn't realise that more over water, 2 hours over water. Friday the 13th, rough old day. I was dying for a piss. Well, I had to use these it's called a travel job. Maybe some of you have heard of it. It's like a plastic bag that you read, and it's lined with some kind of chemical that turns your wee to odourless gel, and it's got a seal at the top. And even though this was only a 1 hour 50 leg, I had to use one. It's so undignified. I'll survey the details. Lost contact with Athens radar. I think it was too low. The forecast wasn't too bad, but the actual was 1,800 foot base. Every time I tried to climb, there's just more cloud ahead, and I had to get down again. So 1,800 feet over water. At least on the Adriatic crossing, I was at 5,000 feet. 800 feet, so close to water. And it was really rough, and I lost contact with Athens radar. So it was a tough old leg, and that's landing in Crete. A little town called Sitia, which is an absolute gem. Not geared for tourism at all, it's really for locals. And it's got its own flying saucer. They borrowed it from Independence Day, and then gave it back. But it's such a cute town, and I ended up staying there for about 4 nights. Waiting for Egypt to give us permission to fly across Egypt. We had a really good handling company to do that for us, but well, for reasons that didn't. Someone in Biggin said, "Oh, I can do it cheaper," and so the guys in Biggin stopped working with the handling agent that I thought was going to do a good job for us, and then the guy who said he could do it for half price couldn't do anything, and we ended up using Egypt Air, who did a superb job actually. So there I am in the ramp. I had 4 days, so I did a little check. Oh, actually, that's something else I forgot to mention. On the leg to Crete, after I landed and refueled, I realised that there was 30 litres of avgas missing, and we thought we had a leak. And so I did a local flight of exactly 1 hour to see if it was burning too much fuel or to see what happened, but it was right on the money. And I think on that leg, on the Friday the 13th leg, I think that the fuel drain was leaking. So I think the GA guys here and girls will know that you check for water before you go flying, and you do it by opening a little fuel drain and seeing if there's any water in the fuel. And I think that was leaking on the whole leg course. I did a heavy check, like a D check. But it was nice to have a break, look at the airplane, make sure everything was good, do the local flight, check the fuel. There are my jerry cans. And then it was time to do the big leg across to Egypt, which was about 4 hours over water at 8,500 feet, which was 3,000 feet higher than I'd ever flown an airplane before. So even that was incredibly stressful. Being up that high, the airspeed indications are different. Again, the GA pilots here will know that you have to lean the engine in the cruise, which means that there's a little bit less fuel in the fuel-air mix. But as you get high, there's less air, so you need to lean more just to keep it from being so rich that the engine will choke on fuel. I don't know if that makes sense. But so just things like, you know, looking after the aeroplane in a flying environment that I'd never experienced before. You know, you do a bit of Googling and you hear about, you know, vapor lock. You can get vapor lock apparently. It's like another thing to be scared of and not really understand. Egyptian air traffic control, who also really worried me, because you hear crazy stories from long-haul airline pilots about some of the conditions that they encounter in some parts of the world. The Egyptians were superb, really good, really loud, perfect English. In Arabic, when friends meet each other, they'll say "Salam alaikum," which means peace be upon you, and the reply is "Alaikum salam," upon you, peace. And they say that on the radio. Arab and Islamic world pilots say that on the radio, which I didn't know until I got there. So when I'm handed from Athens radar over to Cairo radar, and I'm hearing all the kind of Middle East airlines and Egypt Air and Royal Jordanian, they're all saying, you know, in their first call, it's, you know, Salam alaikum, Cairo radar, it's Royal Jordanian 301, whatever. I thought, oh, I'm totally getting in on that. So, yeah, Cairo radar, Salam alaikum, Cairo radar, it's Scott Bravo, Juliet, it's Indy, blah, blah, blah. Alaikum salam, radar contact. And I was like, I'm really getting somewhere now. This is, you know, I'm not in Kansas anymore. And every time I got to a waypoint or a turn, I would just make a call to make sure that they could see me, and that was in the right place. So I'd say, you know, there was a waypoint called Nabsi. So, you know, Golf Whiskey India. You can, once you're established on frequency, you can usually lose a couple of the letters. So the shorthand of my call sign is Golf Whiskey India. So Golf Whiskey India at Nabsi. You know, it's not a required call, but it was just so that to kind of put myself back in their mental picture, and let's see, radar contact. And even just in those two words, it was so comforting, because when they said radar contact, what they're saying is they can see me, I am where I say I am, you know, I'm probably not going to fly into any military airspace or control airspace, I'm not. So there, the Egyptians were fantastic. So my first stop in Egypt was Marsa Matruh, which is a kind of a pretty down-a-hill beach resort for Cairenes. I don't think they get much international tourism. But beautiful water and everything, and to have an Egyptian, my first Egyptian stamp in my passport, having flown the airplane myself from England, was, you know, really proud of myself for that. When I got there, that's landing. But again, because nothing is easy, on the way across the Med, I'd been looking on my iPad. I was using an app called 4Flight, which I wasn't familiar with previously. In the UK, we use something called Sky Demon, but Sky Demon doesn't cover Africa, but 4Flight does. And on the way across the Med, I was looking at the arrival from Marsa Matruh, the published kind of instrument arrival. But then when I got there, I couldn't find it. Nothing in 4Flight is intuitive, and I couldn't find it. So they gave it. I asked for a visual approach, and they gave it to me. But it was, you know, more stress. The other thing was, I wasn't sure if I was going to land on the right runway, because there's a cross runway as well. I actually took a picture of the runway and zoomed in to check the runway number before I actually landed on it, because I just thought, you know, I haven't come all this way to get arrested and deported by the Egyptians after spending 3 days probably sleeping in a plastic chair. So from Marsa Matruh to Cairo, it was along the Egyptian coast, and then south, that's the great and ancient city of Alexandria, which is one I would love to return to, obviously famous for the ancient library. And then heading east into, and again, I mean, so much amazing stuff to see, but I was so out of my depth that actually on this leg, I was so anxious that I was having this weird hollow feeling in my chest, and I was even reciting childhood telephone numbers to see if I was having a fume event, because I felt so unwell with the stress, which was a shame, because it kind of ruined Oh, actually, there's one in between. 10,000 feet, personal best. Everything else is going well. 124 degrees. Slightly reduced airspeed because of the altitude. 2,400 RPM. And everything here is nice and green, full of fuel. But yeah, being that stressed and upset kind of slightly ruined. I keep forgetting there's all these other slides to show you. I'll explain what I'm trying to get to in a minute. One more thing about Egypt. I always wonder, how does Egypt, 105 million people, a third of the United States, feed itself when it's a country of desert? Well, because the Nile Delta is more fertile than England. So this is the Nile Delta north of Cairo, and it's just mega farming. And I couldn't believe I'm in Africa with all that fertile land. But yeah, so finally the bit about being stressed, kind of ruining the privilege of flying past the pyramids. The thing about the pyramids that was quite interesting and funny is that there's no control. And by the way, that's Cairo. They always picture I think they always photograph the pyramids from that side.
From the other side.
From the other side. It's like, no, they're really in town. There's nothing on the map about controlled airspace or an exclusion zone or anything. I thought, could I ask Cairo radar for a sidestep and actually go right past them, like looking down at them. But the frequency was busy. I think I'm very stressed, and etc. etc. So I just thought, enjoy it from where I am. But after I landed at, actually not Cairo International, but a training airfield called 6th of October, I was immediately surrounded by, that's a shame. I was surrounded by Egyptian cadet pilots. And I said to them, can you fly over the pyramid? They said, yeah, of course you can. It's like, God, I wish I'd asked. Anyway, from Cairo, I was going to do the whole length of the country down to Aswan. And this is, and so south of Cairo, it's the desert. I mean, and it's like flying over Mars. What's interesting is you can see the effect of the Nile on the country. I mean, bringer of life, shall we say. Because the rest of the country looks like that, but wherever there's water, it's mega farming. This is just, I think Luxor is over there, but I'm going past Luxor on my way to Aswan. Like I think I mentioned, Egypt Air did all the handling, and they were really, really good. I'm not really a fan of them as an airline, but yeah, they were really, really helpful, and everything worked. Everything worked. All the overflight stuff. There was always people waiting for me when I landed, and even chocks. And then this is the last day. This is the last day on the road. Aswan to Khartoum, with a stop in Merowe, which is in northern Sudan. And now it's really remote. There's no air traffic control. I mean, technically there is, but they can't hear me. I can't hear them. I'm on a flight plan, and I'm just driving over just endless sand. I was 10 hours in total out of gliding range over water in my life jacket, and about 10 hours over the desert, because Cairo to Khartoum is 1,000 miles due south. And so I had a lot of time to think, would I be better off landing on water or in the middle of the desert? I would probably choose the desert, but not by much. I mean, it really looked remote. And I'm at 10,000 feet here. So the visible, 10,000 feet, the visible horizon's about 100, it's over 100 miles away. So these mountains, I mean, that's 40 miles, I reckon. So I can only repeat myself, it's so remote and intimidating. So I was kind of going, oil pressure, carburetor heat. Fuel. Try to radiate that, no one can hear me. Yeah, I mean, an incredible privilege to see this part of the world like this. I wish I could have done it without being scared. And it really made me think, what is the utility of fear? Because all it did was shrink my bandwidth and make me miserable. Ironically, of course, I'd jump at the chance to do this again. When I was doing it, people, there's various WhatsApp groups of airline pilots in the WhatsApp group, like, how are you going to top this? By never leaving the house again. But the trip that having successfully done, it's like, I'd give a kidney to do it again. So a particularly lurid shade of luncheon meat there from the breakfast buffet in Aswan. But that was my lunch every day, was, you know, from the breakfast buffet wrapped in a napkin. Yeah, extraordinary. So Merowe Airport in northern Sudan, because Aswan to Khartoum was too far, so I had to stop in Merowe. I was expecting a really primitive facility with loads of officials, and it was the opposite. It was a really, really fancy runway, and there was no one there to meet me. I eventually found some local pilots who were super helpful, and they were able to find me a container of avgas, which was enough for the last leg. Which it was only 2 more hours to go. It's funny, as an aviation enthusiast, you know when you've arrived in a new country because you see the registration of the local aircraft. And that was one of the first things when I was in Merowe, seeing those parking next to Sudan registered planes. I'm really here because of the ST prefix. And the Sudanese, actually, as an aside, was so nice. I mean, all of them I met. You know, very nuanced, very funny, very self-deprecating humour. You know, really, really lovely people. And since April 2023, they're now engulfed in a civil war, and I really worry about what's happened to some of the people that were so kind to me. You know, I mean, it's not going well. I know that. So rejoining the Nile on the way from Merowe to Khartoum. More stress, tougher climb. The engine did. The only weird thing, the aeroplane was fantastic for the whole trip, except for top of climb leaving Merowe for about 1.5 seconds. It went da 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 da. I think maybe a cylinder, a spark plug failed. So again, I mean, it looks unbelievably beautiful. I was terrified. This is north of Khartoum. I've written a book about this. It's nearly finished, and this is the cover. And finally, Khartoum. I really, you know, it's like, I might get this done. I might get this done. So, let me think. So north is that way. This north is that way, south is that way. I'm flying due south, and you can clearly see this lucky catch of a photo. I mean, Khartoum exists because it's where there's 2 Niles, and they meet in Khartoum, and then combined flow up to Cairo and to the Mediterranean. So you've got the Blue Nile that comes in from Ethiopia from the east, which is there, and you've got the White Nile that comes up from Tanzania, Lake Victoria, and that's the White Nile there. And they literally meet there, and then they flow up towards Egypt, and this is obviously the city. So I'm going. I'm down. I'm kind of on downwind for Khartoum. And by the way, what also made this day very stressful was trying to get to Khartoum before sunset, because I haven't done this. This is now 16 days of it, just so that I can now be blundering around in the dark over Khartoum, trying to read the instruments with my iPhone torch. It's not brilliant, because it didn't have instrument lighting. And so just about this point, I thought I might get this done, and just before sunset, and then Emirates comes on the frequency, and they're like, and asking for shortcuts. And I thought, so now I'm going to get sent to Siberia to make room for Khartoum's only wide-body arrival of the day. And the best words of the whole trip were not even directed at me. It was the controller saying to Emirates, "Go to minimum clean speed now," which I took as him saying, we're bringing the Cessna in first. So now I'm turning final onto it's runway 36, due north. Khartoum must be one of the last cities in the world to have the airport in the middle of the city, because Kai-Tak is gone, and Quito was the other one that was famous for that, and that's obviously gone as well. But love it. It was like having JFK in the middle of Central Park, which I would be all for. I think I speak for the group. Little overview of the airfield. All the parking, all remote stands is on that side. There's a bit of a Mojave over here of old airplanes, which I'll show you in a minute. That's Africa Street, the busiest road in the city. And my hotel was actually just over here somewhere. So yeah, turning final. I was tempted to do a low pass or maybe some very elaborate readback, you know, in the current snow, but I think it's just like let's just you know, get this on the ground. And Emirates are right behind me. Final to land. And I think on this trip I finally learned to fly, and I will draw your attention to how good I am on the I don't think that happened very often before that trip, and it happens all the time now. Here we go. I had to take about 100 pictures to find one where I don't have crazy eyes. And that's the route that I took. There's my first weather diversion. There's Kefalonia there, Crete, Marsamatru, Cairo, Aswan, Nairobi. And I've just got a couple of pictures to show you of Khartoum Airport and some of the aviation stuff. Now, none of this, so the airport has been closed since April 23, and all these airlines have been grounded because of the civil war. But at the time, and this is what makes, among other things, what makes the war so heartbreaking, is that they were, you know, Sudan really had a good aviation scene going. 2 airlines fly, Barda even started flying to London about 2 weeks before the war started. So Barda and the other one's called Tarko. Is Tarko next? Yeah. Both with fleets of old 737, 300s, 400s, 500s. But you know, flying in and out, you know, being busy. It just felt like a real, you know, happening place, and with a lot of potential and a lot of optimism as well. I mean, the reason that they bought this airplane was for training, because you know they wanted to start training new pilots. That was a nice thing to see. It's probably you'll never find out, of course, but this was the only passenger A300 not in Iran that's in flyable condition. It wasn't flying when I saw it, but they said literally one turn of a screwdriver and that would be airworthy, and little lost history there. That's a reminder of the golden age of Sudanese aviation, and surely the smartest livery that's ever graced a 787. Well, Equatoria joined the chat, but that's a really nice livery. And so I'm not sure if it's the same airplane, but so this is in the scrapyard on the east side of the airfield. You can see it's still got that swoosh is still there. And they had some really cranky domestic planes. That's a Tu-134 that flew domestic for quite a few years. It's a different 707, apparently ex-Braniff. It was a 327C, but only flew freight in Sudan, not passengers, although it was like a passenger liner. It's obviously not Southwest. I can't remember who. It's a 73 anyway, 737-200. I zoomed in just to show you. It's not often you see a 707 with a web address on the side of it. They had a domestic IL-62, and so this was the thing. When I finally got there, I sent a request from Aswan of a couple of things I was hoping they could do for me while I was in Khartoum, and one of them was make sure there's someone in Merowe waiting for me. That didn't work out, but you know. So I really want to talk to you guys about Sudanese airlines and aviation, because you know we have questions. You know, and the main one being, did this really fly passengers, or did it one of those things where it arrived and it never really got into service? And they said no, it flew domestic in about 2015, 2016 for at least a year or two. In fact, I've even got quite a charming bit of proof of it. If only we'd known. If only we'd known. We could have all jumped on a flight to Khartoum and flown on that thing. Anyway, just looking down the runway there. That's the this guy ran the project of my flight. He was the guy who was texting my ETAs and ATDs and field stuff too. A Sudanese guy trained by Air India, and was a kind of became an IL-76 specialist. And it was quite funny because just realised what different lives we've led. While this guy was being a loadmaster on IL-76s in the oil fields of Libya and in Antarctica and God knows what else, I'm doing, this guy here is doing social media campaigns for bands. And we worked out that he was a few weeks older than me, a few weeks younger than me, and I said, but I think you're the more serious person. This is Jacine, who is going to be the chief pilot on the Cessna, the chief instructor, and I think he's now flying military jets in the Civil War. I'm trying to think what type. It's a ground attack Sukhoi, ST-25 maybe? Anyway, just a couple of quick pictures in the markets in Khartoum. Interesting, because it is pretty heavy duty. I mean, it was even bombed by the US during the Clinton administration. It's a very adversarial relationship with parts of the Western world. And I really thought, I don't know if it's going to be very safe to walk around, but I asked, Jacine, and am I safe in the city? He said, absolutely. And I really was. I spent a lot of time I was there for only 2.5 days. But safe to walk around, very friendly. I never saw another white person. There's no tourism there, or was. This is again in the market. That's the Nile at sunset. One of the requests, I'm a spiritual person, but I'm not a religious person, but in my request list from Nazareth, I said, you have to take me to a mosque, because I must give thanks to God for my safe delivery and out of the airplane. And they took me to a beautiful, the Mosque of the Two Niles even has its own Wikipedia page. There we go. Yeah, and just a little bit of cartoon life. It's funny, you think in a poor country they don't eat as well as we do, but the truth is that they can't afford processed food and fast food, so it's all fresh, it's all organic. That's the Nile at sunset, after sunset. I recently saw this building here go up in flames on the news, completely destroyed by fire in the war. Okay, this is my check-in agent when I'm flying Egypt Air back home. I could have had Egypt Air or Saudi Air, and I chose Egypt Air because they did the handling across Egypt. And it's landing at Heathrow. So 737 to Cairo, Dreamliner from Cairo to London. People said, was it kind of a hollow victory after all that struggle and the stress and, to get home in a matter of hours? I said, that was fantastic. This is such a relief. There's actually an easier way of doing this. And to prove how fast air travel is, this is the coffee pot that I bought in a market in Khartoum on the afternoon of my last day, and the next midday it's on my windowsill in rainy, blustery England. And that is the end of my trip.